Hey everyone, in today's video we have a very special guest, and if you want, make sure to check the chapters in the description of this video to help you find the perfect section for you. Hey everyone, it's Tony with Hidden Light Photography, and we are very blessed to have Frank here with Seti Astro, and we're going to go through what it took to make the scripts that he developed, as well as how to use them. So Frank, I'm going to give you the floor, and let's go through this.
Hey, thanks, Tony. Hey, everybody in Hidden Light Photography community there. This is Frank from Seti Astro, and it's my understanding you guys maybe have started using my scripts or just hearing about them right now too. So that's amazing. I kind of got into it actually. It was a community member just asking me how to stretch some stars a little bit better, and I was like, this is a good opportunity. I've made other tutorials. I made a tutorial about pixel math. Turns out not a lot of people like pixel math, so I was like, this is going to be a great opportunity to get my feet wet, try to do a little scripting. I'm not in software development, so my coding knowledge was very basic. My background, actually, I was a nuclear electrician in the United States Navy on submarines. And then after that, went into the heavy industrial rotating machinery space. So we repair large electric motors and generators. So not coding, not software development for anything like this, right? Yeah, let me get my screen up. Okay, great. Yeah, so not knowing how to code, I had seen plenty of other creators out there doing things with ChatGPT, just silly things, right? Like how to process my image, or write me an intro, or write my whole little episode. So I went for it. I asked it if it knew about PixInsight and if it was familiar with the software and coding and what it would take to code it. And I had quite the lengthy conversation with ChatGPT here on how to go about writing a script. The other thing I found very useful, if anybody wants to get into scripting, is there's an amazing video on the PixInsight forum, an introduction to scripting. Lays a lot of good groundwork. It really helped me be able to talk intelligently to an AI such that it could start giving me responses that actually would work. And then the other thing I really did was I dug into the specifications for PixInsight itself. So there's an XISF spec, and we all know it as just the extension of our files, right? You get a master light, it's .xisf. It's actually a full-blown image specification. So it goes through everything, just like any ISO standard would. It covers how the data is constructed, the different coding behind it, ranges, all that. But kind of down deep in it, you come across a thing that's called display function. And in here, they define a lot of things, but they define this midtones transfer function. And this is actually what's going on when you're using histogram transformation. When you slide that midtone slider around, this is the actual equation it's utilizing there. And I found when I was stretching my stars, really that's all I was doing. I was pulling the midtone slider down, hitting apply a couple times until I liked how the stars looked. And I thought, man, I can make this really rigorous. I'm kind of a math nerd, so I figured I could really do something great here. So I took that midtones transfer function equation and I just put in 0.25 or a quarter, right? That's what I was doing. I was pulling that slider down to a quarter. I was hitting apply a bunch of times. So I just put a quarter into that equation and simplified it. I got like this 3 times the target over 2 times plus 1. And then I just put all that back into the equation to see how the equation kind of responds if you just hit apply a bunch. And then I got like this 9 times and then 27 times. And all those are powers of 3. And all the ones on the bottom were power of 3 minus 1. So in this blue box, this is actually what it's doing analytically if you just wanted to, so to speak, move the slider one time and hit apply instead of doing it multiple times. That's how I based the slider in Star Stretch. And I was like, this is perfect. I have the math behind it. I got a chat bot that's willing to help me code a little bit here.
Yeah.
And I decided to put in a little color boost too. Nothing scientific about the color boost. I just did it so my stars look pretty, and apparently it worked well, right? A lot of people like the color boost. So that's really what got me into scripting and doing this first thing, just getting a good stretch for your stars. And then along with that, I shoot with an acro refractor, at least for the time being, and the RGB stars suck. I mean, even though I shoot mono and I have separate filters for each RGB channel, blue is still very bloated. And I think my RGB stars just are abysmal. So I will actually go out of my way to shoot narrowband to use the narrowband stars. And because of that, I needed a good method to do narrowband to RGB stars as well. I was a big fan of the 4X palette utility that did that too, and big fan of it. I've had some tutorials on it, and I just wanted the stars portion. If you're using that script, you have to do the star list and the stars every single time. I just wanted the stars, so I kind of made a different script just for that. It's very similar math. Like if you're just going to do it in pixel math, that's all it's doing. But it has a nice interface, right? And more importantly, it does the star stretch for you at the end. So
I like that. That's a good part to that script right there.
yeah. So I mean, this is kind of where we got star stretch. We're just going to open that up. It's gone through plenty of iterations, and anybody out there that's seen or been following any of my scripts for a while, you'll notice I put out a lot of revisions, right? As the community is asking for updates, as we're figuring out better ways to do things. Again, I'm not in software development, so trying to do the best I can to get the updates out, when I can. So like things like previews and those kind of things kind of evolved over time too. But with Star Stretch, it does what that initial box equation does. You can go ahead and show a preview, which is helpful now in case you're, unfamiliar with how much you should be stretching your stars. And you can kind of see how bright they are now just with the preview. And this is the mono one. We'll brighten them in a second. But if you move the slider down and refresh the preview, now you can see the stars are dimmer, right? Because we, so to speak, we applied that histogram transfer function fewer times, 2.8 times versus the 5. So really that, if you're just starting out and trying to understand, how bright to make things, the slider and this refreshing the preview should help you kind of get it in right away. And then for the narrowband RGB stars, usually you're just going to be using like an H alpha and an O3, but it also allows you to put in sulfur stars if you have sulfur stars. And for all of those that have one-shot color cameras out there with those dual band filters that are becoming more and more popular,
Yeah.
all you got to do is put your stars only image in this drop down. You don't need to extract your channels or do anything funny with that. Just run StarX or StarNet and put them into that, and it'll take care of the extractions and stuff for you. And then, like you were saying, you can apply the star stretch right there. So we can go ahead and show the preview. It'll run through all the math to combine those stars, and we'll just go ahead and execute it. And it really just does what it needs to do. It makes really good stars. They have color to them. There's no magentas. Just blues and golds and reds, what you would expect your star field to look like. So it was a really good kind of dipping my toe in the water and getting some scripting out there and rolling that. Kind of the next thing was my statistical stretch. And I think this is the one that got my scripts more popular. I noticed that's when a lot of people started seeing my scripts coming up, right? So I'll talk about this stuff here in a second, but the bottom line is I thought, sometimes STF, the screen transfer function, works fine. Other times it gives you just disastrous results. I think we've all done it. You run noise exterminator or something and you run screen transfer function and it just goes crazy, right? And that actually stems from the documentation again. So we talked about the midtones transfer function. They also define a few other things. There's a clipping function, an expansion function, and if you keep going down, there's a section here that talks about this normalized median absolute deviation. It's just a statistical measure of how much spread there is in the data, right? And they have this like 1.48 times the stuff. That 1.48 is just to normalize it to standard deviation. So in the end, it's supposed to be doing the same thing standard deviation does. But there's a big problem, and this is where I wholeheartedly disagree with the authors of PixInsight, is the photons entering your telescope are not a normal distribution. It's a Poisson distribution. It's a different statistical beast. So when things are noisy, STF works just fine because it is really close to a normal distribution still. But when you go ahead and remove the noise, we're going to see here how much it really affects everything. So I have a noisy green channel from a galaxy I was imaging. And we can pull up the statistics for it. And here, I'll just zoom in so it's a little easier to see. So our standard deviation in this noisy image is the 7916. The MAD for it is 4611, which is about that 1.5 times the other, right? 1.5 times about 5,000 is about 8,000. So that's why when your statistics are noisy before you run noise exterminator, STF looks okay. But when you go ahead and then run noise exterminator, we can go ahead and look at how the statistics in the image change now. Now the MAD is almost an order of magnitude lower than the standard deviation. And that's why the stretch now is almost going to be an order of magnitude harder. So now if we just go ahead and run screen transfer function, you get this big mess, right? It just overstretches it because the MAD is so small, it's so close to the median, that's where it's clipping it. It's using that as the clipping function. And I was like, we could do better than this, right? The guts are there to have a good tool. It's just overstretching it. So that's really why I wanted to come out with statistical stretch. So we have all the tools actually in Star Stretch. We have a good method of stretching. We just need to be able to define our black point, which is our clipping function, and then stretch it. So I determine our black point in statistical stretch using standard deviation. And we saw in PixInsight that doesn't really change a whole lot based on the noise level. It will change, but not nearly as dramatically as the MAD, which is just way too aggressive. And then the other thing in Star Stretch, we have everything we need. We have the median we want to go to. So that's like this capital M here. So when you actually type in user or the target median, That would be this M. The T is the image median, the actual original image median. So all we have to do then is turn the original median to the target median. And everybody, high school, you got to solve for X.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, in this case, the X is in an exponent in both the numerator and the denominator, and you get this fun-loving logarithmic ugliness here.
Yeah.
But it still can be solved. It still can be analytically solved for that. So then when we use that in our stretch, it determines exactly what the stretch needs to be. So let's go ahead and so here's our linear data, right? It's still in its linear state. If you go ahead and open Statistical Stretch, we could leave it at the 0.25 for right now. We could turn off normalize the image range. We could talk about what that actually does. You could always refresh the preview so you could actually see what your stretch is going to do. And just for this case, we'll just go ahead and execute it at the 0.25 so we can see really what's going on. Okay, when it's done, we can go ahead and look at the statistics and stuff again here. But now you can see the median is 0.250022. So it really does just nail whatever you had in your target there. And with that, it doesn't blow it out like it does in screen transfer function. And you could really see that if it's the colored data. So here's linear. It's the same stuff, right? We were just looking at the green channel. This is the colored version of it. And if you look at the statistics here for the colored version, MAD is almost like 2 orders of magnitude smaller. So it really is just going crazy. But on Statistical Stretch, it's not going to do that. So here's the linear data again. Let's go ahead and open Statistical Stretch. Also, I wish I had a bigger community when I was naming this thing. I hate the name Statistical Stretch. I would have preferred something more catchy, but this is where we ended up.
It really drives home just the amount of data and work that it's actually doing. So I appreciate the name.
Right. But let's go ahead and use some of the suggestions here. It says 0.1 is a good value for distinct objects like this distinct galaxy here. And the reason is you're selecting the target median. The median of our image here with a distinct galaxy in it, most of that image is background, right? Most of it's not actually signal. So you still want that signal to be fairly low. You want the background to be darker, right? So we'll go ahead and set it at the 0.1. There is a curves boost, where I'll be able to show that in a second too. But let's go ahead and refresh the preview. There, this is more like how you'd want to stretch your galaxy for your initial stretch. And really, that's what I want Statistical Stretch to be. It's your baseline stretch based solely on the image properties to get you from a linear to a nonlinear state. And then from here, you could go crazy. Apply all your artistic contrast tweaks. You could hit it with curves. You could hit it with GHS. But I really wanted a good tool, especially if you're in the professional community, that you could do a stretch based on the image properties and still even be able to use it in the literature if you really wanted to. So this is how the stretch would go about if you were actually just wanting to do it as your initial baseline stretch. And with all my scripts, there's really no black box. So let's go ahead and find this History Explorer here. We could open it, the process container we just ran on Statistical Stretch. If we open that, here's the different pixel math that it actually ran for Statistical Stretch. We found the black point, and then it actually did the stretch, and we had normalization unchecked, so it just returned the image. And then beyond that too, that final curves boost we did is in there too as a curves transformation.
Oh, nice.
Here's the actual curve it used for that curves boost. So there's no magic really going on, no black box in any of my scripts. They're really utilizing the good tools that are already in PixInsight, just kind of more smartly, a little more automated. Takes the guesswork out a lot of it, which has been a big goal of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I think another one then that is more well known, I guess, is the automatic DBE and removing the gradients. We could have a whole separate session, Tony, if we want to talk about gradient removal techniques and why I don't like gradient correction and a few other reasons, but we could spend a lot of time on that. But needless to say, we deserved something better than gradient correction when PixInsight came out with that thing. We also kind of get a black box with Graxpert and other AI-based things where we don't know what it's doing. You can't really tweak anything. It just does its thing. And it does have a tendency to remove small-scale structure at the same time. So what I really wanted to do was do something for DBE, which is a great tool. It's just a real pain in the butt especially if you're just starting with PixInsight.
Yeah.
to use DBE. It is not user friendly. There's kind of a learning wall. It's not even a curve. You come up against the wall when you want to use that. So I had recently did a little collaboration script to do Find My Background, which is another great little script. All it does is find a preview for your background to use in like background neutralization or SPCC, but it laid the groundwork to really help this grading correction. So what Find Background does is it uses something called gradient descent, and it uses gradient descent a ton in ADBE. Essentially what it does is if you have your image here, all the high points in the image here are brighter points and all the low points are dimmer points. It essentially just places a bunch of balls on the landscape and lets them roll downhill. Mm-hmm. And wherever it ends up in these valleys, for Find Background, it just takes the lowest point it finds and calls that your background. Then you know it doesn't have any signal or anything else, or there's no stars, right? It necessarily avoids the stars. Stars are bright, so it kind of rolls around all the stars and down into the valleys.
That's a good way to explain it.
Yeah, and we could do that on a whole bunch all at once for the purposes of finding points for DBE. And right, because you can't have a point near a bright star, you can't have a point in a signal area. All these different restrictions when you're using DBE for it to work properly can all be automated with something like gradient descent. So let me kind of hop back in here. And the great thing with gradient descent, and I'll show you on this one here, is sometimes we have dark structures in our images, right? There could be dark dust clouds, molecular clouds. We don't want our gradient correction tool to think that is gradient. And if we run something like gradient correction, the process from PixInsight, and just run a quick here on this image with the dark doodad. The model it generates has kind of this dark band in here. Anyway, it may be hard to see. Maybe one of these. Yeah, so you can kind of see there's these blobbier shapes up here, and you could, right off the bat, you can start seeing this isn't all gradient. There's all sorts of streaks and small scale structure that it's removing. And then even with something like Graxpert, it'll do a better job. But again, there's no way to tell Graxpert, hey, that dark thing in the middle there, don't think that's gradient. And here's the background it found. It is better by a lot over the gradient correction tool. But here, the zooming out is easier to see. It still has a big patch here where the dark doodad was, right? Where we don't want it to correct. So the really nice thing with ADBE is the ability to actually exclude some of those areas. So you can click this user-defined exclusion area, and it's going to pull up a preview for you. And you can use shift-click, just hold shift and click and drag, and you can drag these rectangles. And those are all places now that it will avoid placing any points. So you could actually just exclude, dark structures, or let's say you have a galaxy that may have some like dark dust lanes inside it, where something like gradient descent could easily get caught somewhere in the middle of the galaxy. You could just exclude all that stuff. There's a ton of options over here. We don't need to talk about them all, but some of the key ones will be the number of descent paths. That's essentially how many balls you're putting on your image and letting them roll downhill. There's the same options that DBE has as far as like tolerance and stuff, but the beauty with using this method is it's going to automatically calculate your sample radius you need. It's going to calculate the smoothing factor because it can look at all those endpoints and see the variance between them all. And we do have a means of doing a simple initial gradient removal. And this is kind of important because if there's already a big gradient on the image, like this one, where it's kind of from the lower left to the upper right, that there's that big linear gradient.
Yeah.
If you just went ahead and, so to speak, threw a bunch of balls on this image, they'd all roll in the direction of that gradient right now, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to remove that initial degree 1 or degree 2 gradient first to make it kind of a flat playing field, and then let it do its thing. So if it's kind of a simple gradient like this, where it's like a left to right or up to down, you'll want a degree 1. If you have something that looks more circular, like vignetting, or like a flat, like your flat field wasn't corrected properly, you'll want a degree 2 for that. So just think of it that way. Yeah, degree 1 is these simple left to right kind of gradients. Degree 2 are kind of the circular vignetting looking gradients. And then just hit execute. It's going to go ahead and run automatic background extraction first to remove that simple gradient. And then it's going to go ahead and calculate some image statistics. And now it's actually going to do gradient descent on all those different paths. And then when it's done, it'll run DBE on all the endpoints it found. And now here's the gradient it found. Much smoother. Yeah. It doesn't have a big diagonal dark streak in it. And we can go ahead and look at the SPF here. And it looks really good. I would say, I think it overcorrected in the lower right. And there's a good reason for that. There's a really bright star there. And this is a perfect example, and this is why I like showing this one, is, again, this isn't a black box. Let's go to History Explorer. Let's find a particular image. So here's everything it did. It ran ABE and it ran dynamic background extraction. You get DBE off. Let's just undo once to undo the DBE. We can open it up, just double click it, and it's going to have all the points and stuff still on it that it actually utilized. And look, yeah, there's a point right down here, right by the star, because the script places a point in each of the corners. And if there happens to be a bright star right on the corner, it rolls off the bright star and it got stuck in this dense star field. So we could just go ahead and move that away from that bright star, hit the green check, and it'll just rerun it with all those same settings we had. And now that overcorrection's gone, and you have a perfect gradient removal, even for something like this. It didn't put any points in the dark nebula. And again, no black box. We went right into the History Explorer. You can tweak it or whatever with the other methods. It's just not possible to do that.
Now, if I can pause you really quick.
Yeah.
In my DBE video, I was mentioning that when you have a dense star field, it might be a good idea when placing your points to remove the stars and then correct the gradient and then put them back in.
Not necessary.
Not with this.
It's just not necessary. And the reason is, if you look at any of these points, the preview that it shows you around the point, all those black areas are things that we'll not consider in the process itself, which are the stars. Yes, it's the reason you want to avoid stars is you're avoiding the halo around the star that it will think is gradient. The stars themselves, like here, you'll just move this around. All those black areas will be completely excluded from the algorithm for DBE. And that has to do with how much shadow relaxation you actually have in there, that parameter. But yeah, if you go by a bright star, it's completely black, right? If you try putting it on a bright star. So it's not necessary. In fact, you don't want to. You want to do your correction with the stars in it, because that gradient affects the star brightness as well. And if you're going to be really particular on using like if you're going to use SPCC, which is a very exacting tool, right? You're really trying to match the flux in the Gaia catalog to the output of not only your sensor type, but your sensor filter to have exact star fluxes. You have to remove your gradient first, because the gradients affect the star flux as well.
Got it.
Good question, though. All right, so that's ADBE. So these are kind of like my two big processing scripts that really help, do kind of your initial setup, remove that gradient, stretch your item. We did so after that, it's kind of what I think kind of the more fun steps. Fame is my next one to help while you're processing. It's a mask editor. I had so many requests for a freehand mask editor, and that's what this is, my freehand adaptive mask editor. I specifically chose it because it has a contrasting name. It has a nice preview for you there. But it's just like a Photoshop lasso tool. You click and hold shift. You can draw whatever shape you want on there. Done, right? You can draw multiple shapes. You can still draw ellipses. You can move them around. You could even like rotate and resize them. And if you hit the space bar, you could cycle through your different shapes. And all the shapes can be rotated and resized. And if you don't like one of the shapes you drew, just make sure it's the highlighted one and you hit the little undo guy down here, and it gets rid of it for you. So if you drew it wrong or something, you could just get rid of them. The other really good thing is, I think a lot of people, when they were using the game script, only used binary masks. So here, let's just draw a shape here. Binary mask is what it sounds like. It's just white or black, and that's what it is. A lot of people drew an ellipse around some object, had your binary mask. I wanted to make sure we had a nice suite of masks in here. So you could do a lightness mask, which will take just the brightness in there. So brighter objects will be whiter, darker will be dimmer, right? So so that way, if you apply that mask, it'll only really be affecting the brighter areas more than the dimmer. There's a chrominance mask, which will have the effect of showing you where color is. So if you're trying to isolate just the colors in an area, so you can maybe like boost them or tweak them or whatever you want, you can go ahead and do that. And then beyond that, I just put a whole bunch of different colors in here too. If you just want, a red mask for that area, you could do that as well. So that way, it's kind of like a one-stop shop to get the mask you need versus making multiple masks and trying to merge them and all those kind of things. So now we could go ahead and look at those masks we made. Here was just red mask, so that was the red portions of that area. The chrominance mask looked like this, and the core of Andromeda was over here. Even though it was bright, it was white, right? There's no color data in white.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as opposed to the luminance or the lightness mask here. Yeah, here's the core, it's nice and bright. And then again, we just had the binary mask. So I was really happy with that. I don't know why PixInsight never made a freehand. I know, yeah, we could talk about philosophy on PixInsight on a third episode of Hidden Light Photography.
Right.
So that's mask editor. I do have a mask merge script. Every once in a while, you will find yourself where you may have a couple different masks that you kind of want to smush together in one way or another. That's all this is. It's really quick and simple. You could do it in pixel math, but like I said, a lot of people don't like pixel math. So I got 3 masks here. They're just circles, so we can see what's going on easier. You could take the union of them all, so you could just see it kind of just added the 3 together. You could intersect masks. So now it's just going to take the portion where they're overlapping each. You can do things, like add the 2 together and then just intersect it with the third. So just different ways of merging your masks if you need to.
Yeah.
I don't find it happens all the time, but man, when you need to put 2 together, it really does come in handy.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I have some other scripts in there. They're more technical for like continuum subtraction and a few other things. Maybe we could talk about those at a different time, especially if a lot of your audience is trying to get some easier processing methods. But there are some other scripts in here that I've developed that really do take the learning curve out of things like continuum subtraction and stuff. So when you are getting more advanced in your imaging hobby career and you really want to start doing some of these more advanced imaging techniques, I have stuff in here to help with that too. And just so your viewers know, like continuum subtraction is how they find a lot of these new like planetary nebula, like that oxygen arc over Andromeda. Like these things only come to light through techniques like continuum subtraction.
Yeah, we could definitely do another episode going over those.
Yeah. I mean, I could. There's enough in there. We could just have a standalone on continuum subtraction. But
Yeah.
I want to get into a fun one here. What to do with your image when it's done? So you're done with your image. It looks pretty. You're really excited about it. I'm a geek. I want to know what's in the image. A lot of people use annotate image and PixInsight to, populate what's going on in your image.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll find a little planetary nebula, and then I always end up having to then upload the image into like astrometry.net to plate solve it, and then I bring it over to Aladdin, and then I'm looking from Aladdin over to Sinbad, and I wanted to do all that in PixInsight.
Yeah.
So I have my same Andromeda image we've been using kind of throughout the video here. And I made a script called "What's in My Image." It's gonna really allow you to dig into what's in your image. So it has 2 previews. There's a mini preview off to the left to let you know where in the image you are, since when you then it could be hard to tell where you're actually at in your image. And you could shift, and I mean, you could just click and drag around in either of these. They're both interactive. But the great thing is, if you just want to do some searches, you could shift, click, and drag, and it defines a radius here, and just click Query Sinbad, and it has everything in it for you. You can click a marker. It'll highlight the one down here that you clicked on, so that's an emission object. You can click down in here, and it'll highlight what marker you're on. And if you double click either of them, it's going to go ahead and open up Sinbad with that entry for that object. So you can really start digging in really easy in your images. And then beyond that, if you need to do some more annotation, you can click this annotation tools, and I made a whole little suite of things in here for you. You can like draw arrows to stuff. You could actually like do celestial distances. Like these two objects are 2 arc minutes apart. You could like add a celestial compass to your image. You can add some text if you want to, like, yeah, we're looking at that cool object. We're pointing to it. You could just doctor up your image now, where before there was absolutely no good way of doing that in PixInsight. And then you can go ahead and save the image now. You could either save the crop view by clicking the check, and it'll just save what's in this window instead of having to save the whole image, or you could leave it unchecked and save the whole image. You could like show all the marker names, which could get busy if you got a lot of markers down. And then the other really nice thing is, we can clear all that. I made an advanced search too, and you're actually looking at the latest version here. So it has all the object types, and there's a lot, but you can be really specific as to what you're searching in your image for. So, like, one I always look for are quasars. You could just click quasar, confirm your selection, and I'm just going to query the entire image. And it's going to go and, make that query to Sinbad for the whole image, and then show you where they are. So it'll show you where all your quasars are. And again, you can go ahead and open that up. A lot of quasars have a redshift associated with them, which is great because it allows you to calculate the actual distance to it. So this one is 1.323. This is a NetRight Astra cosmological distance calculator, which is really great. You just type in the 1.323, click flat because we're in a flat universe, and it tells you that quasar is 13 billion light years away, right? So it's
nice.
I don't know, it's just something you can geek out over on some of these items. The other really cool thing with the newest version that I have for what's in my image is, let's say we look at all the supernova remnants here in Andromeda. So we'll query the whole image again. Here's all the different supernova remnants. They're just scattered all throughout the whole galaxy. You can see them all listed here. If you click Save Collage of Objects now and click Save Annotated Image, it's going to go ahead and pull all those images out, and we'll just call this, Andromeda Collage. You could save it as a JPEG or a PNG or a TIFF. There's a couple different options in the drop down. And then the next thing that comes up is to save the annotated image right away. If you want to save the annotated image, I'm just going to exit out of there. We don't need the annotated image. But now if you open up the Andromeda Collage we just saved, it made a whole collage of the supernova remnants. Here's all the supernova remnants now in Andromeda, already laid out for you with the labels and everything. Just another great way to show the objects in your image that you worked so hard to spend time shooting. And right, you want to bore your friends and family with this stuff, right? This is like part of the reason we got in the hobby.
And I'll be honest, I had no idea that even existed. That is just amazing.
The other really cool thing, I'll do it on this example here, is a lot of the time you want to know if Hubble also imaged your object, or Spitzer or JWST or whatever, right? So recently I imaged the cosmic gecko, or whatever you want to call this nebula here. But something that intrigued me right away was this kind of X-shaped object. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. You don't see X's too often, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just doing a little Simbad query, you can see right away. It's like there's this emission line star. It's a Herbig Haro object. It's inside this reflection nebula. I'm like, that's really cool. There's all these different things right there. Under advanced search now, I also have this query mast, which is an astronomical database for Swift, Hubble, JWST, Spitzer, Chandra, like all those space-based telescopes are in this mast archive. And so it'll query the area for that, and it pulls up all the different stuff, and you could see, Hubble imaged this thing. Perfect. If you double click on it, it'll take you to the mast portal. And I would recommend copying, pasting this URL out to a better browser, because the PixInsight browser is not the best browser in the world. But in the mast site, like, here's the areas it imaged. Here's all the different telescopes that are in the database. So you can click HST, that's the Hubble Space Telescope, right? And here's all the data to download, right? It's all the fits it took for this object in infrared and optical. It shows you what filters and stuff. So like, I went ahead and downloaded one of it, and here's Hubble raw data of this object, and I geeked out over this so much. Like, this is my object. Like, it's the same thing. It's Hubble, so it's better resolution, but I was like, that is so cool that, even the professionals, have this data out there that we can now access. And before, trying to find the data, trying to just find that stuff was such a pain. And now it's all kind of consolidated in one really cool little tool that now you can really explore after you're done with your image what's going on, because there's just so much to explore in your images. I had somebody, I think it was a Facebook forum or whatever, go, why would you even make a script? Like, don't you know what's in your image already? And my reply was like, you know everything in your image already before you image it? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
There's so
maybe
much
they were thinking
out there.
maybe they were thinking like, oh, you didn't know you were imaging M87? Like, no, do you know all the carbon stars in your image before you image it and stuff, right? So I spent a way more time than I probably should in the what's in my image script, just doing this kind of stuff and looking at everything. I guess two other ones that will probably be very helpful for beginners, or anybody in general. Removing blemishes has always been kind of a pain as well. There's the clone stamp tool, but that is challenging in the best of cases, right? You end up having to, like, define an area kind of next to where you're trying to overwrite. The backgrounds never match up, and it's very frustrating to use clone stamp. So what I did, I kind of used the same idea. So we have our blemish here in our image. This case, it's a stellar lens flare. When you draw a circle around that object, in the script, it's going to take the 6 tangent circles to it, calculate which 3 most closely represent the middle circle, and then pixel by pixel, take the median of the 3 best circles and put it in the middle circle. So it takes the content of the surrounding area and overwrites that middle circle to remove the blemish. So it's a lot more content aware. It takes the guesswork out to like actually, like in Clone Stamp, you're trying to manually just eyeball a good spot. And in this case, right, it found these like 2 darker circles. It has this brighter circle. You don't want those ones. You want the ones that match the other ones. So, I mean, let's just go ahead and open my Blemish Blaster. It looks a lot like my other scripts, right? It has preview off to the right. You could zoom in and out. And let's just go ahead and again shift click to draw a circle around the thing, and just click execute, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And we could do this one too. And then like even on the harder case we were kind of showing in the PowerPoint there, like here's one, it's in the middle of a bunch of content already, right? So let's just give it a go, and it's gone. And the great thing is, if I only gave you this image, I think you'd be very hard pressed to tell me where the blemish was in the first place. Exactly. And I think that's the whole point of this. Is it 100% scientific what we put in there? No, but we're removing stuff anyways from the image. You'd be very hard pressed to even tell where it was until you undo, and you're like, oh, there it was. And you can undo them, and then when you get all your blemishes removed, you don't have to do one at a time either. You could draw a whole bunch of circles, right? And you could just right click them to remove any you don't want to. So there's a lot of functionality in here. It's all in the instructions up there. But when you're done removing your blemishes, be sure to click apply to the main image, and that'll push all those changes down to the main image. And then when you exit, there's some cleanup it does in the back end. The other really nice thing it does now as well is there's a freehand option. If you don't want to draw a circle, like you want to kind of get a little more detailed around the stuff, there is that option. And there's also this option to remove satellite trails. So using control click, you can define a line like this, or you could even alt click, and it will automatically try to determine the satellite trail line for you. Either way works just fine. And if you click execute, once your line's on there, it just removes the line.
Nice.
Adjust the satellite trail width a little, right? Some trails are going to be fatter than others, depending on just what went through your image. And it does a really good job. And I mean, you can see if you zoom way in, if you pixel peep, you could see where it overwrite it with the other surrounding content. But it's gone for the most part. Like it's way better than a huge bright streak through your image, right?
Yeah.
And that's just a big help. And then the other thing is, adding your signature back in when you're done. Okay, I'll do one PixInsight rant. They're really particular about not incorporating third-party software with PixInsight that they consider competitors. They don't want any competition in their space. That is why it's been so difficult for the authors of Graxpert to get their process turned into an actual process in PixInsight, because PixInsight considers them a competitor, which is ridiculous. But at the same time, they provided no way for you to add a logo or a signature to your image, forcing you to go to third-party competing software, right? Rant over. anyways, so I made this Astromark signature adder. It'll open up with, your image. It says select image and then select your signature. So you got to have both open at the same time, and it just allows you a good way to put your signature wherever you want. You could zoom in and out. You could shift, click, and drag your signature around. There's sliders here for like rotation. If you want to make it bigger or smaller, you could adjust the opacity to like fade it into the background. And then there's even just some like standard, hey, I just want it in the lower right corner kind of thing. And also beyond that, I got different blend modes. Now, unfortunately, the scripting environment in PixInsight doesn't allow different blend modes in the preview, but I do have options there, and I put a little link to my website to help you choose what the different blend modes do. So by default, it's a normal, but I kind of overlaid it on a bright star so you can kind of see what the different blend modes do to just help you visualize, what it's going to do if you're not familiar with it. But then just click execute, and it puts your signature right down there in your image for you. You don't got to dump it out into Affinity or GIMP or anything else anymore, which is just nice because now it's still in the full 32-bit XISF format, right? You didn't export it as a JPEG or a TIFF or something. It's still all in its native state, having your signature on it.
Correct. Really quick, because I'm sure there's some people that are going to wonder this. Do you already have to have the background removed before applying that?
Oh, for your signature?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you make your signature, I think I made mine in GIMP back in the day, but when you open a new image to actually like do your thing, make sure you select transparency or transparent as the background color, and it'll be transparent. Then it won't actually have like a black or something like that. You didn't hear it from me, but if it is solid black, like all zeros in the pixels, it'll also turn that transparent in the script. But it's still much better to have it transparent in the get-go.
Right. So whenever you're creating your signature, do you have a preferred program to create your signature in?
Nope. The script, like, this is a PNG. PNGs probably are the easiest file format to do, but it'll put any picture in there for your logo. Like I said, I think I used GIMP when I made mine. It's a free Photoshop. Affinity, you could also make it. I know there's a sale going on recently with Affinity. If you have Photoshop and you put up with their subscription-based membership, you could use Photoshop. And even if you just like Google logos or transparent background logos, there's just different websites you can go to make it. As long as you have an image, it should work just fine.
Perfect.
And I think we've talked about it, or I've talked about an hour. So yeah, throw some questions at me now, and I'll see what I could do to answer any that may have been kind of churning in your mind here.
No worries. I love it. So best practices, right? You were going to go over a couple of options in statistical stretch.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So some good options for statistical stretch. So on, again, distinct objects, you're going to want like that 0.1 range to keep your background dark. And I always give it a little curves boost, considering all you have to do is hit undo one time to get rid of it if you really didn't like it when you hit execute. It's like no harm, no foul doing that. But yeah, for distinct objects, the 0.1 is a good starting point for doing stuff like that. If you have something Let me open something else here. What's this? Okay, so here is hydrogen data from the Wizard Nebula, and it's this and noise reduced. In this case, you're probably going to want to keep it on that 0.25, right? The signal is filling out the entire image, so keeping it on that 0.25 will allow the whole image to kind of be bright and full then.
So in other words, distinct object, it is distinct from the background.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah. Right. So if you put this to 0.25, the whole background is going to get 5. And that's going to be too bright for most people because, the galaxy is small in here. It is not representative of the entire image. In this particular image, the background is representative of the entire image. So when you do something like adjust your target median, the median of this image is just background. So that's why on like that you want to keep that target median low and maybe give it a little curves boost to help brighten up the actual object you want. When you have an object like this where literally the whole image is signal, right? Maybe this dark cloud is the only thing that doesn't have any hydrogen data in it. You're going to want it like at that 0.25. And you can see when I'm just using this for the histogram. This is the kind of histogram you want when you're done stretching, right? Like using GHS, they're like, you got to get rid of these bumps and this and that. It is just a nice full histogram for the whole thing. And Statistical Stretch just does a really nice job of being able to do that for you, because if you're trying to go from a linear to a non-linear state using like generalized hyperbolic stretch, even if you know what you're doing, it is tough. It is a pain to get it to work good.
Yeah. So on those check boxes in Statistical Stretch,
Yep.
We had that upper one for the automatic, and then you have
automatic convergence. Yeah. So what that is, I'll back into it. If you have normalize checked, when it's done doing the stretch, it's going to look at the brightest pixel in your image. If it's not at 1, right, like it's 0.95 or something, it's going to slide that up to 1. It's going to stretch the range of the entire image to fill out the entire range from 0 to 1, so you don't leave any dynamic range on the table after the stretch. When you do that, there will be a small shift in the median then, because it did the stretch first, it put your target right to the median it wanted, and then it did this normalization where it stretched it just that little bit further to fill out the whole range between 0 and 1. So if you have automatic convergence checked, now after that normalization step is done, it's going to go, hey, what's my median now? Oh, it's too high. So then it reruns Statistical Stretch to place it back, the median back to what the user specified. So for the vast majority of time, I never leave that checked. It's only if you really want to be if you want to be very exacting on the particular median of your image after the stretch, you could have that checked, but it really isn't necessary. It actually replaced, it was a form field box on how many times it would run like consecutively. So it would iterate through the process multiple times if you so choose, and eventually I just got it to an automatic kind of a thing. But the vast majority of people just leave that off, don't even worry about it, because unless you're a statistician, I don't think you're going to be that exacting on where your median actually landed.
Right. So when would you want to use that bottom checkbox? Like, what is a good
Normalize?
Yes.
I like using that on images like this galaxy would probably be a good one. When you're done doing the stretch, here we'll just do the stretch and we'll see. Okay. I hope I didn't rerun it a bunch on it. So this is Southern Pinwheel. Okay. So looking in here, here's all the steps again, right? So let's just undo. Oh, I did do it first. Okay, let's go back to a linear state. So we'll just rerun it quick. I have that in there to fill out the whole range in your image. Okay, so here's the stretch is done. Here's our history explorer. Let's go ahead and let's just step back. We're back in the linear state. So the first thing it did was let's pull up our histogram. If I okay, there. Okay, here is our histogram right now. First thing it does is it finds a black point, and then it does the stretch, and then now you can see it stretched it out, and then it'll normalize it. And you can see at the very upper end, it may even be hard to see. Oh, statistics will help. So before we normalized it, oh, it does have a maximum of 1 already. So right now, the brightest pixel in the whole image is 1. So when you normalize it, it's still at 1. But let's say this number was like a 0.95 or 0.96. Having normalization on there will then shift it up to be 1. Since 1 is the maximum pixel value you could have, if you aren't filling out your whole dynamic range in your image, and this is just personal taste mostly on my end, I feel like you're leaving some dynamic range on the table. You're not representing the image in its full range of brightness as you could. So that's why I have that checkbox in there, to ensure that when you're done with your stretch, it has everything that your image is capable of representing, from the lowest low at 0 to the highest high at 1.
Perfect. On your Blemish Blaster.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as choosing circle size or even the sliders on there,
Yeah.
I could say with my M16 image, for example, I have a bright halo around a couple of the stars. So when I actually extract the stars from the image, that halo stays within
Yeah.
the when I used Blemish Blaster on that, it seemed to have cloned one of the structures next to it and then put it back in. So
Yeah. Great observation. So here we'll look at this, and it's kind of a bit of an order of operations. If you yeah, let's try doing it like this. If you remove this one, that one didn't do it. I'm trying to replicate what you're talking about here. No, it a lot of the time it has to do with the order at which you're doing it, right? Because it's taking the surrounding area and filling it in. So if your surrounding area also has a blemish in it, it may pull that into it itself, right? What you're going to want to do is then try to be smart about the order you're doing them in, right? Remove the smaller, less distinct one first. That's kind of off to the side that was getting pulled into the main one, because it just does it in the way you did it, right? The way you draw them on the screen is the order at which it's going to try to remove them. And I can't seem to replicate it right here, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
So then, I think I know what you mean, because it's looking for like areas around using those 6 circles around the initial circle that you drew. So if it finds something that's alike, it's going to kind of clone it into that area that you're trying to get rid of.
Yeah, it actually uses the median of the 3, or of the all 6. So if the brightness of one of the good circles happens to be the one that also has a blemish in it, it's going to use those pixels in there, right? Because it's trying to pull the content from around it into the middle one. And yeah, unfortunately, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I can't seem to get it to do it. It's working too well right now, Tony.
It's all good, no worries. Now, what I found, and this could be just sheer coincidence, so that top slider, okay?
Feathering?
Yes. Yep. Adjusting that, and this could be, again, pure coincidence, adjusting that got rid of it wanting to pull that structure over and clone that structure.
Right, because if it was towards the edge, that's why I put this little mini preview here.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I'll just put it all the way extreme to the end here. You could still see the blemish in there because it feathered the underlying image through what it was trying to correct. So that's something to play with. It works exactly like clone stamp. It feathers from the outside edge. Like if I leave it like this, where it's going to be a hard edge, now you can see the hard edge there, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to want to feather that, and depending on just where or what gives you the best results for your blemish is really where you want that set. And that's why I thought it was important to have like this undo functionality, and same with this opacity. Sometimes you want some of that underlying color and stuff to come through. So you can turn down the opacity, and in that case, it almost gives it the effect of just dimming the blemish versus completely trying to overwrite the entire thing.
Yep. So it's one of those scenarios where you need to play with it and get the best results depending on the data that you have.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Perfect. Do you have any advice for anyone that's just starting out? Because PixInsight, like you said, sometimes you hit a wall instead of just a steep learning curve, and these scripts just, in my opinion, almost eliminate the learning curve of PixInsight.
It helps. It helps a lot. I would say keep at it. Don't be discouraged. The first time opening PixInsight, just are presented with like this big gray background of nothingness, and you don't know what's going on. I always have a whole suite of image icons. I make what I use my icons available to the public. So if anybody wants to use the icons I have saved on my PixInsight desktop, let me know. I have a link for all my icons for that. And then watch some of these tutorials out there. The work you're doing, the work I'm doing. There's really some really good things out there to help when you're beginning. And I would say don't go for the 4-hour tutorial on image processing. Find the 15 or 20-minute one that's doing exactly what you're doing. If you're doing a one-shot color, look for that kind of tutorial. stick with it, because yeah, PixInsight is the most powerful astrophotography software that is out there, hands down. You spent good money on it, right? It's not cheap. So it's well worth the effort to learn it and really try to master it, because every single APOD and IOTD and almost without exception, every single one of those images is processed in PixInsight.
Yeah, very well said. And speaking of tutorials, I want to get some tutorials that you have on these scripts and drop some links in the description of this video as well for people to go check out.
It's easy to get to, SetiAstro.com, and I have PixInsight scripts thing, just a tab you can click on, and I have links to like all the videos I made on these scripts, as to what they're doing, how they work, and I have a dedicated video, at least one video on every single script I've made, if not more than one video, right? So that's the easiest way to get to the videos I have on that. And hey, I'm another content creator. When you're on my YouTube, check out the other stuff I've done. I got tutorials, and I also go ahead and all the images I take, with my scope, I go through. I go through it, kind of the data I took, what I found when I was doing it, what palettes I used, kind of cool science I find about it at the end. I always like covering that, and that was actually the initial reason why I created my YouTube channel in the first place, was to discuss the images I was taking and the science behind them. And I still do that. Somehow I turned into a PixInsight channel, but I didn't lose my original focus. I still do those videos.
Very good. So I'll have a link to your website, and I'm going to put a link to your channel as well. And speaking of which, I mean, doing just a amazing job with helping people with PixInsight. How can we support you?
Oh, if you're so inclined, you can become a channel member. YouTube. I like sharing the beta scripts as I'm making them with channel members, so they could play with them and stuff before they're actually available to the broader audience. Also, for channel members, I make all my master lights of all the images I've ever taken available, so you could play around with any of the master lights I have. Or if you just want, on my website, there's an About Me and Donations page. If you guys want to buy me a cup of coffee or something like that, more than happy. If you're fortunate enough to be in that position.
Perfect. And I think we'll wrap it up for now, and then later on we'll get another collaboration video and go more in depth with some other subjects if you're up for it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is great.
Perfect. Well, it was great having you on the channel, Frank, and I look forward to next time. And I hope this helps out a lot of people, and I'm sure we'll get some questions, and we'll just address them as they come in.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, Tony.
Thank you.
Truly a standing ovation deserved for Frank with Seti Astro for his dedication and commitment to the astrophotography community. So please check out his website and channel, and make sure to subscribe to Seti Astro and check out his memberships. I'll have links to both his website and channel in the description of this video. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to check out that join button and consider a membership and the many perks that come with it. Your support helps creators like Seti Astro and myself bring you more content. Also, that channel icon that popped up, hit that channel icon and subscribe. I don't want you to miss out on any future exciting episodes. Drop a comment in the comment section. Do you have any questions? Do you want to see these scripts used both individually as well as implemented into a complete workflow? And then check out that next video. Until the next time, clear skies.